Hey everyone, welcome into another episode of Jubilee Gardens, and as usual, I'm joined by Commando Santa. How's it going, man?
Good. How about yourself?
Good, doing well. So I know we've exchanged a lot of photos on this thing on Discord, and right off the bat, I want you to know I was not trying to one-up you in any way whatsoever. All I've done up to this point in the game is really work on my Paris park, and so having a new subject matter, I just felt the creative juices flowing, and I got a little carried away.
It's okay. I'm just a little mad at you, but whatever. I only did 2 buildings, and you just decided to finish the rest of the park. Whatever.
Yeah, yeah. If we keep one-upping each other, it'll be like eventually one of us will just finish the park, and it'll be that's like the shortest collaboration ever. Yeah,
that's what I'm gonna have to do. I guess to one up you, I'm just gonna have to finish the park. So 2 weeks, Jubilee Gardens will be over. 4 episodes.
Yeah, tune in everyone for the finale next 2 weeks. That's awesome. But seriously, yeah, I just got into it, and honestly, if we did all, so I think I did 10 buildings, which is ridiculous. And if I did all of them in the time lapse, I think I sent you, it would have been like over an hour of footage. So we're only going to go through 5 of the 10 buildings. I kind of just picked out the ones that I liked the most. So we're going to show about half the main street in this time lapse. If anyone's interested, and wants to see the other buildings, I'll probably just upload that as, a time lapse of its own with just some music playing. So if that's something you want to see, leave a comment below. If not, hopefully you can kind of get the gist of the main street as we move along here. But, as we discussed in the first episode, this is inspired by a lot of the buildings on the Disney Main Street, which is, it's hard to find an exact architectural style like that Disney based it off of. I know that I went to school in Colorado State in Fort Collins, Colorado, and that's one of the cities that they based it off of. The other one was Walt Disney's hometown from somewhere in Kansas, and so the general style, though, like the closest I could find, and maybe there's some people that know for sure, but the closest I could find is that it's kind of like Victorian revivalism. So a lot of that type of stuff, you get a lot of like, detailed woodwork and, lots of vibrant colors with a lot of white trim typically. So I tried to just kind of take that to the extreme. And I also did a lot of research on Disney Main Street in and of itself and kind of the colors that they use, because I don't know about you, but for me, a lot of times color is one of the hardest things to get right in the game, especially moving between different textures, because like for example, the art shapes are super bright. So anything that I usually color the wood with, I tend to make that, I take that same color and copy it to the art shapes, but then make it a little bit darker. So that's one issue I have with coloring in the game. The other is just getting colors that look good together. And so one thing I read about in Disney that they do is they try to implement colors from one building to the next. So like a main color of one building, like 2 buildings down might be an accent color. And so I tried to do that in the park here. And I think it turned out pretty well. And right here, one thing that I did do is I experimented with that trick that someone posted on like Reddit and Twitter and stuff, where if you sink these barrels into the ground, it actually prevents the guests from walking through. It acts the same way that the trash cans do. And so I did that little open door trick to just see if people would walk through it, and they definitely do. So you and I talked about it. I think we might try to do some interiors later on, and that will definitely come in handy when we try to do that.
Yeah, and that was like our main kind of issue, because that's the thing that you can't really get in Planet Coaster is having like signature doorways, because the paths are super wide and the doorways are super thin. So I guess that helped, right?
Yeah, so even you saw it was like the smallest width door that there is.
Yeah.
And I did a test with it off camera, and the guests walk right through it. Sometimes they get a little bit bottlenecked if there's a lot of them, but they still manage to, walk seamlessly through it, and they don't clip through the other pieces at all. So
yeah,
that was an awesome find, whoever discovered that. And Frontier, please don't fix it.
Yeah, really. Oh my gosh. But yeah, going back to what you were talking about with like the color palettes for the main street, really what we try and do and what we really want to do is pretty much catch their eye with certain, buildings and stuff. And I guess the main street with certain colors and certain buildings, it's kind of almost to overwhelm them with like so many different joy and like emotions kind of when you're walking down Main Street, and it really is going to set a great theme for our park, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like I said, we looked into it a lot from stuff that Disney does, and it's just crazy. Like people that aren't necessarily theme park enthusiasts or know much about Disneyland and stuff probably don't even realize that's something that they've paid attention to and taken into account. And it's one of those things that when you're making your own park, those little details are things that the average observer probably wouldn't notice, but for whatever reason, your mind kind of pieces it all together and it makes sense, and it has the feel, of a real park. So that's something that by doing that, I think it accomplished that goal. And yeah, so one thing too, why we're talking about colors, so that building to the left is a yellow, and I actually ended up changing that. What I did was I copied the color from your awning that you made right to the left of it, and I colored the building that color, and it did two things. So it dulled down the color of this green building. It brought out more of the gray and less of the green, and then it just made the Main Street flow a whole lot better. So you'll see that in the time lapse, or not the time lapse, the cinematics at the end of the episode. But it really, really helped to tie the Main Street together, because what I was noticing when I was working was I had one side of the Main Street was very bright and vibrant, and the other was almost like pastel, and it was kind of continuing as I kept going. And so by adding in that color from the first building you did, it really tied the entire Main Street together, and just made the colors match much more evenly across both sides. So it's just crazy what little things like that can do for the park.
Yeah, and it seems to flow really, really good. And I mean, like, that's one thing, like, I took a few graphic design courses in college, and that's like, you can have a whole class or spend a whole year just studying color and the way it like affects emotions and how to flow it well and everything. Because I mean, same thing with the color, and almost kind of what you did, it flows really well. And it's like you said, when you change the color, you have two kind of different colored buildings next to each other. Sometimes they look great and sometimes they don't look great. Right. And I think you did really well with that.
Thanks. Yeah, I was happy with how it turned out. I mean, just using the technique of kind of carrying similar colors throughout and using them as accents and things. Like this blue color right here is the color of some of the blue accents on the entrance building. So I tried to carry that over, and I actually end up using it as a main color of another building later on. I don't think that one's in the time lapse here, but it will be in the cinematics. And right there, one thing that sometimes I find myself is I have a gap that I'm trying to hide, and those window boxes are your friend.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
Huh.
So you can definitely use those to your advantage to hide things, because I needed to make that bottom piece there fit where it is now, and then that left the gap in between, and just using the window boxes covered it up nicely. And this is probably one of my favorite things in the whole Main Street, all this intricate kind of woodwork down here in the bottom. If you're familiar with Disney and the Main Street, you probably recognize this building, but it's cool. It's got this little inset entryway as well below, and you'll see that as I kind of progress here. But I definitely used like those wooden windows as sort of an edge piece, and that definitely increased the part count, but it's nice because they're thinner than the wood beams that are in the game, but they're the same texture, so it kind of creates a seamless look, but they're not quite so bulky.
I really enjoy the baby blue accent, though. I think that makes the building really pop.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you wouldn't think that, if you just thought about it in your head, the green color with a light blue, baby blue, you wouldn't necessarily think would work. But there's just slightly enough of it. Like you if you cover it up with the white, it just, I don't know, for whatever reason, the little tiny bits of it work really well.
Yeah, it almost turns it to like an off-white once you have like the white accent pieces in there. Mm-hmm. Huh. I mean, like, that's the thing with Disney too. Like, they have engineers that spend literally months trying to plan out these buildings and the color palette for them.
Yeah, that's what I was. So I was when I was researching, I actually came across this architecture student from, I think it was on Georgia Tech's website, maybe. But she did her thesis for her master's on Disney, and so she had, this whole paper. It was like 100-page paper, which I did not read. I'm not that much of a nerd. But she had this like 100-page paper with like photo, documents and things. And she even did like a shadow study of the main street on how shadows, progress throughout the day, on all that kind of stuff. And she just kind of exposed to me for the first time the amount of detail that the Imagineers go into when they're kind of making these buildings and deciding the layout. And you're exactly right. They have a very strict color palette that they use for all of their buildings.
Yeah, and they're thinking about things that we don't even like notice, Right. Like, it's like you said, with the way like shadows are casted on the building, a way certain pieces and certain light will cast. It's crazy. It's absolutely bonkers. Like, yeah, it's nuts. So, I mean, but the thing is, it's like you can, and I'll even see this sometimes with my own buildings that, I'll slightly change something or slightly adjust the color or adjust an angle or add a detail or remove a detail. And it's like, at the end of the day, is it really that big of a deal? No, but for whatever reason, it just kind of works in your head better one way or the other. And so yeah, to be on their level like that all the time would be ridiculous. Yeah, I would. Oh my gosh, I would have so many headaches.
Seriously.
I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I spent some time like wondering if I could angle a building differently or angle some pieces differently in like my personal projects. Like, would like the sun shine better on this piece if it was angled like this? But sometimes I just don't really care. Yeah, well, and especially like I watched your last episode of Buffalo Valley as I was editing this, and like I know you referenced like when you upload stuff to the workshop that you have to a lot of times spend more time working on the building when you upload it to the workshop than you do when it's just in your park, because when it's in your park you're only concerned about what the guests can see. And that's true. I mean, I did that with this main street here. It's like all of the back has no detail whatsoever, and just the front is like heavily detailed. But I mean, that's fine. I mean, we're planning a pretty hefty backstage area as well, so
right,
we're going to cover pretty much all aspects of that point. But I mean, like, that's kind of what I did with my buildings, like for Buffalo Valley, like you're talking about. I usually will take the building and kind of bring it off in the middle of nowhere and just start rotating it and see different, like, kind of how light kind of bounces off different sections, and just make sure I have as much detail as possible so someone can take it and just kind of put it anywhere and it looks good from anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, like when I have it in my park, I almost have it like framed, you kind of frame your building with like trees and bushes and kind of like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at it from different perspectives and viewpoints, and there's like, sometimes you will or will not place trees in certain areas because you want to preserve a certain point of view and things like that. But like you said, first, if you're going to upload it to the workshop, you want it to be more versatile than that. But this is probably, I'm not going to say it's my favorite building on the Main Street, but it's one of my favorites. So you'll see as we progress along, this is the Main Street Theater, which our park is going to have several theaters, just because there's some really cool source materials that we found, and we can talk more about that. We're going to kind of give another overview of the art styles we're going into. But yeah, this one is basically the same one that you find on the Disney Main Street, and I don't think it's on the time lapse, but you'll see it in the cinematics. We decided to kind of pay homage to the community a little bit, some of the projects we follow, and some people who have have been supportive of our project. And so on the marquee here, one of the things you'll see in the cinematics is Bro Coaster. We also did Toliko and Koali Beach as well. So just a little shout out to the community there. We wanted to kind of give you guys some props, and also you'll see later on the corner of the main street, I named a restaurant after Sam Denny, and then we made the Emporium named after Bo, just because she does such an awesome job with the community, and Sam obviously did such a great job with the game. So
obviously,
yeah. Well, Sam and team.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll have to do something which is Frontier, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the theater idea was really cool, and you know what? I would go into a theater to watch most all those episodes, really.
Yeah. Yeah, although who knows if we're ever going to get another episode of Bro Coaster or Toliko.
Yeah, really. We'll see. The watch comes out after this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I look like an asshole.
Yeah. Of course.
So speaking of like little details, this is another example of things that I changed. So I use that stucco sort of detail piece. I don't even know what it's called in the game, but the one that has sort of the roses, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I used that, just got that top edge there exposed, and off camera I went back and did some editing, and I copied it around to the bottom side as well. And that's just an example, like we were talking about, of one little detail change that really made a difference in the final product. So it just, as people are building their parks, and as anyone's doing that, those are the types of things that you can kind of look for, and it may not be worth it to do, but sometimes it is.
That ticket booth is probably my favorite thing. I did not notice that in the pictures you sent. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and he even has the door on the back. So
yeah, perfect.
Yeah. The only thing is, I would hate to be the poor bastard that has to work in that.
Oh yeah, it's probably gonna be so hot.
Yeah.
Well, the only other thing we need to add is like a side door or a back door that people can sneak into the movies,
right.
So you can sneak into R-rated Bro Coaster films.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good.
Yeah, I was a little bit worried about all of the red down below, but then when you, like, right now it looks like too much, but then I feel like when you back out away and you see the gray and stuff, I think it works pretty well together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to look fine, especially after you light it up a little bit.
Yeah.
You'll get the different shades from the different lights.
Yeah, and then just for a little bit more realism here, just add some cables to give the illusion of supports holding it up.
Yeah, you gotta hold those babies up.
Yeah, which those new brackets for the monitors and stuff are so versatile. That's what I use for the wall there.
Yeah, I used them to hold the signs on the confectionery building.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and they worked out really
that's
well.
Right. Yeah. And then something that I didn't do the level of detail you did was, I know on the roof of the confectionery building, or not the roof, but on the awning over the sidewalk, you added a bunch of like cables and stuff for the lights, and which I don't think we highlighted really in the last episode.
Yeah, I know, we just kind of
went off on a tangent. So.
Yeah, super long tangent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I added a little bit of those wires and cables and stuff. I think they call them conduits in the game.
Yeah.
I forget what they call them in the game. And it just kind of like snakes all over the place. And I had those drum lights I didn't even want to hide the drum lights, so it kind of looks like they would be there, in an actual sense.
Yeah, I tried to do that with the two corner buildings. I used those lights, and I tried to do kind of a similar thing that you did, but I had a really hard time getting the angle down that I needed them to kind of shine, so I ended up sinking them into the awning a little bit, but I tried. So and apologies in advance for future frame rate and using all of those wooden pieces to make individual shingles, but it just, I couldn't get it to work with any of the in-game pieces. So
I think most of the roofs we're going to be doing are custom already.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the in-game pieces are awesome, but as it's been discussed ad nauseum, they're definitely a little bit big in most cases, and the versatility is tough, especially when you're, they're definitely fantastic if you're kind of making your own original design that's maybe even inspired loosely by something. But when you're trying to duplicate something that people are familiar with, or even something that, it exists in real life, and you really want to nail the look of it, it's really hard to do it with some of the in-game roofs.
Yeah, they're just not super versatile, but they're great for, the average user.
Yeah, which I know we kind of talked off camera that your two buildings here were kind of the first time that you kind of delved into that, and which you did a fantastic job for that really being your first go of it. I mean, it's building in that way is totally different change of mindset. And you did a great job for your first go run of it.
Complete different experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely way more time consuming. But I've seen a lot of people try to do that building, both of those particular buildings that you referenced from the Disney Main Street, and yours are right up there with some of the best I've seen. So.
Oh, shucks. So
as you continue to build in this style, I have no doubts that you'll get more comfortable with it, and hopefully it'll speed up. I mean, even I've been building in this kind of way for a while now, and it still took me forever. And like I said, if we would have done all the buildings, this would have been like an hour-long episode.
Yeah, really. And I know we have that like almost graveyard/workshop set over to the side of the Jubilee entrance. And we just been putting all these different pieces over there for future use.
Yeah, that's one thing that I definitely need to get better at. And actually, that's kind of served as a reminder to me that I can copy things from other buildings and reuse them. And so I did that. I did that with like your awnings that you made, which were awesome. Like there's no way I could have made better. So I just copied them and use those, and then I kind of started doing that with some of the detail, like the faux woodwork, if you will, for some of these buildings as well, and it helps speed it up a lot. And that's something I think we talked about at the beginning of this collaboration, that one of the cool things about doing them is that you learn things from people, and that's something that I've already picked up in doing this with you, just reminding yourself that you can copy things around and add them to different buildings and change the colors, and all of a sudden it looks like a unique piece that you spent a lot of time on, but you actually did it in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I found myself just kind of tearing apart your entrance building when building my two buildings in the front there. And then like I would go and I would start building my own version of the piece, and I'm like, wait a minute, I can just kind of detach it and copy it and then put my own spin on it,
Yeah, which I don't know if... I'm sure most people are familiar with that by now, but there's a way so that little sort of outlined square in the bottom right-hand corner of the UI, if you click on that and you click on a building and then you click on like individual scenery items that are not attached to any structure, you can actually add them to the building. And so that's a way that you can even take stuff from old buildings, like take them out of the building and then copy them into a building, so you still maintain like one structure basically. And it's easier to select those pieces and all that stuff. So I'm sure most people are aware of that, but if you're not, that's definitely something that can speed up your builds and allow you some duplication of stuff across different buildings.
Yeah, that's one of the things, there's a lot of features in this game that not a lot of newer users find out that easily, and that's actually one of those things,
Yeah, for sure. So real quick, this building here is it's one that I think most people who are familiar with Disneyland, Disney World are aware of, and it's called Casey's Corner in Disneyland. And so this is the one that it's in our park, it's Sam's Cafe. So this one's named after Sam Denny. And this one was a lot of fun to do. This spire here, though, I'm not going to lie, was a challenge. Just getting the angles right and getting it to copy around right was tough. But, because this is so different than the stuff that I've done before. And so like I said, there's a reason why I kind of went a little crazy. It's because I was just having a lot of fun working in this style, because it was just creatively different from what I've been doing. So
Yeah. With that spire, though, I mean, for my ice cream shop, that was almost something that I wanted to do, but I just couldn't find myself to have the patience to do that. Especially with the holiday weekend, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you had the park over the 4th of July, and you'll see in the next building that I kind of, something that I'm going to start doing a lot more often is, like, instead of trying to, so right now this spire is kind of centered above the building below where I want it to finally be. And what I end up doing with the next building is I make a dome, but instead of trying to work closely within the area that I want the finished product to end up in, I just took, you know, like right now I have this grid piece that's up in the air that I use to kind of rotate things around with, like that.
Yep.
But so if you just copy that and just go completely off to the side, you know, away from the main building, it's a lot easier to work. You're not getting caught up in copying, you know, pieces that you don't want to copy by mistake, and it improves the workflow a lot. So that's something that I'm sure a lot of people are already doing and aware of, but it definitely was a new thing that I kind of started doing in this, and it helped a lot in terms of speeding up the time.
Yeah, exactly. And then sometimes when you're up a little bit, sometimes your camera will get caught on different buildings if you're using the advanced camera.
Right.
It sometimes can get a little finicky and you'll zoom out a little bit further than you expect, you know?
Yeah, so it's like if as long as you leave that initial grid piece there to reference it back to, like you can copy that stuff, move it off to the side, work on it, and then just go back to that same grid piece that you left, and it'll be right back where you wanted it to be.
Yep.
So that was a big help. I think we've got about a little under 8 minutes left in the time lapse. And I know we wanted to talk about some of the upcoming things. You said you had a request on your last video for kind of an overview of art styles that we're going to be doing. So I don't know if you want to kind of start getting into that a little bit.
Yeah, so we can start talking about a little bit, just kind of the recap, kind of the art styles we've been trying to do. I mean, we're talking about, like, you know, like Art Deco is, I think, something that I'm going to try and do is Art Deco. And we kind of talked about almost like coincidentally, after we talked about Art Deco, we started seeing Art Deco show up in some of other people's parks, and it's kind of cool, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's obviously a design that or an architectural style, I should say, that a lot of people like for good reason. It's incredible. And so it's just been cool. It's cool to see what a lot of people have done with it. I think his username is JPT on Shy Guy World, has a cool kind of Art Deco inspired park going on. And then I've seen like who was it? SP Ridley and Adfo in their competition in the Shy Guy World forums did a really cool Art Deco kind of area as well. So it'll be cool for us to kind of get in and try our hand at that. It's a really cool style. Something we also talked about was like mid-century modern, getting that sort of 50s vibe in a certain area. And that's something that I actually got to see firsthand at Knott's Berry Farm in California when I was there on vacation. They have a whole area like that, and it was really cool. And then we want to do like kind of an 80s inspired area as well. And then I'm sure we'll have some like contemporary stuff in there also.
Yeah, we want to try and keep things, separate and kind of separate. Some of the similarities can probably overlap in different parts of the park, but we want these own sections of the park that you almost step into the time period.
Yeah, for sure. And when we initially started this project together, we both kind of talked about as great as some of the in-game themes are, we really wanted to kind of branch outside of that and challenge ourselves to kind of do more than just the in-game themes. And so none of the areas will be like, there won't be like a castle themed area or, a sci-fi. There won't be that kind of stuff. It'll all be like, you might find sci-fi elements in like the 80s area, but it won't be a sci-fi section of the park, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's, to answer the question, that's kind of what we have on tap going forward. And I don't know if you want to kind of talk about what you might be working on next.
So not to spoil too much, but I think I'm going to work heavily on the path system, at least the original branching structure of the path system here. I kind of want to delve into maybe trying like a fountain or some kind of like centerpiece here. And then I definitely want to start adding a few rides just so we can get some people in the park.
Yeah, that sounds good. And that's, speaking of that, there. So off to the side, you may have seen in the background, I did work on a wooden coaster. Is inspired by the Twister 2 in Elitch Gardens in Denver, which is the same park that inspired our entrance building. And that coaster, so Twister 2 is actually inspired by an original coaster called Mr. Twister, and that was the first coaster that I ever rode as a kid. And I couldn't find enough source images of it to get a good idea of the layout, so I just kind of did the Twister 2, but we don't know where we're going to put that yet. It's just kind of off to the side for now. We need to get some path work laid out and things like that before we can really get an idea of where we want to start putting rides. But nice. I'm looking forward to seeing what you end up coming up with, and it's always my favorite getting like update photos and stuff and seeing things come together. So,
and it's almost turned into like a slight competition too. Like some of the things like, hey, I did this, or we don't even show each other what we worked on, and it all of a sudden turns into a big surprise. It's kind of, it's a little fun in all honesty.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, hopefully that gives you guys a good kind of overview of where we're headed and what we're going to be doing. If you have any ideas you want to contribute, like I know in that first video, someone did come up with the idea of, I can't remember the architectural style. I'm going to butcher it if I try, but it's kind of similar to what you find in like the Universal Hollywood Studios. That
it was like a Beverly Hills style or something.
Yeah, exactly. So like stuff like that is fantastic. If you have ideas like that, that helps us a lot, and gives us even, more source images to look for and things to implement. And so yeah, let us know in the comments below if there's anything that you would like to see. And yeah, we're coming up here. We have a few minutes left in the time lapse, and just to kind of touch briefly again back on the build here, so that the red accent pieces there is another example of carrying a similar color throughout the entire build. So that red there is found in probably half of the 10 buildings. And it's just a little like visual cue that kind of ties it all together. And I think this building is probably my favorite out of all the ones that I did.
It's a pretty fantastic looking building.
Yeah, it's just over the top on detail, and yeah, here's an example of what I was talking about earlier, where if you kind of move things off to the side and keep that grid piece, you can just bring it back in, and you always have your point of reference as you're working off to the side. And then here, like I said, I'm finally getting smart and copying stuff around instead of duplicating my efforts over and over again.
Yeah.
And so yeah, just fully completing one side of the building here and then copying it over to the other side as well. That might seem like common sense to a lot of people. I don't know why I wasn't doing that stuff before, but it definitely, my workflow has improved drastically as we've moved along here. So.
Not to put you on the spot, but how many hours do you think you spent on this part?
Gosh, way too many.
I'll take that as an answer.
Probably 25 maybe.
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah, a lot, because there's even stuff that's not recorded. That I like. You'll see them in the cinematics as well, but there's some planners that I made that, based on the way we laid out the grid of our main street, which we weren't thinking of it at the time, but it worked out really, really well for this purpose. So we have like a central path grid for the main street that's based on like the 8 meter wide pieces, I think. So we have 3 of those across. Then on the sides of those, we have the 4 meter path, and it's 2 wide. And it's like barely almost touching the 8 meter grid. So there's a slight gap in between, which is nice because it allows you to put like benches and stuff without the 2 paths intersecting. And so what I ended up doing was creating planters that also serve as a bench. And like I said, you'll see that in the cinematics. But it's nice because the benches are like fully integrated into this sort of brick planner, and the peeps can use them. It's not hidden like what a lot of people have done. It's, you know, you can actually see the in-game bench, but it's just kind of the supports for it are hidden inside brick, and I'm really happy with how those turned out.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to try and spend about 29 hours in my section. So just to one up you.
Sounds good. More power to you. Like I told you on Discord, there is zero chance that I will ever do more than what I just did here. So
all right, shall we wrap her up?
Yeah, I think we're about out of time lapse. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And we'll just see you in the next episode.
Take it easy, guys.